Oh, this one's being, you're being distributed.
Just wait a hand.
Oh, wow.
I'll go to your...
That's what my YouTube videos look like, by the way. This is my YouTube videos.
Okay, stand by. Here we go.
Okay.
Wow. 3, 2, 1.
Oh, there I am. So that totally threw me off knowing that was going to happen, that was going to be recorded. So my name is Ashley Montgomery. I am the director of the Teaching and Learning Collaborative at UMF. And what that is it's a center that supports faculty teaching. And that incorporates all aspects of faculty teaching. So it can include technology, it can include advising, mentorship, internships, anything. But for the purposes of this session, one of the things I was asked to do 2 years ago was we had a retirement, kind of an unanticipated retirement in elementary ed. And the faculty member who was retiring taught a course called EDU 302, Computers in the Classroom. And the course had been taught only by this person, and it really was time for a pretty serious rethinking of the course. And one of the things they knew was that the technology, instead of being in a standalone course, needed to be better integrated in the other methods. And so the course needed to be scaled down, it needed to be rethought. And so they approached me and said, would I take it on for 2 years, kind of reconceptualize it, and give them a chance to figure out where they wanted to go with the class and with the position. So I did that, and that's what this session is connected to, okay? So can we get, oh, there I am. So what I'd like you to do is I want you to try, we're going to try 3 things today, and you can choose not to try them or try them, it's up to you. The first one is I want you to go to a website called Nearpod, and you can go on any device, and it's Nearpod. And when you get there, I want you to click on that you're a student. And when it's going to bring up a box for you to enter a PIN number. And this is the PIN number, TZNCS. Now the cool thing about Nearpod, I noticed that Mina's writing it down. If for some reason, if you get off of this, guess what? That letter is always going to be at the top. So it's always going to give you a chance to rejoin.
For those of us who are still connecting to the network.
That's fine. Take your time. You can also see it up here on the screen.
Okay, there it is.
But Nearpod is a really interesting app that basically lets you broadcast to screens on any device. No plugins need to be downloaded. It really, and if you have a browser and you have a connection, it works. And it has some built-in interactive features.
Can you show us the pin again?
It's up there.
Pin, TZNCS.
Where do we put that?
You click on student.
Actually, they changed it. It's now join session.
Join session?
Yep,
Okay,
up,
sorry.
Up right-hand corner.
Join session, right there. I clicked on it. Now just enter TZNCS.
There's a lot of people on the internet in this building today.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
Imagine that.
Wi-Fi.
Okay.
Wow, it's
great.
Oh, it's
So,
chunky.
Nearpod. And is this particular technology necessary for the session? No. But it's a way to give you an experience of something that we're all accessing it on multiple devices. It's easy to do. One of the concerns I hear about BYOD or BYOT, whatever you want to call it, or mobile learning is, oh, they're going to get off task. They're going to be on Facebook. They're going to be all this kind of stuff. And this is one way to serve as a kind of a reminder to help students get on task. We'll stay on task. So one of the things you can do is you can ask students to enter their name so you have kind of an idea of who all is in here. You guys are just listed as number. Oh, Shiva got her name in there. And this will be relevant in a minute when you see, I'm going to give you a poll question in a minute, okay? So it's called Bring Your Own Device, Bring Your Own Technology. Just in case you didn't know what the definition of it was, it's in general a policy that allows students to bring any device with a connection to class.
Is that policy on all campuses here?
It's not a formal policy. It was a
But
policy
it's
I used in my class. The class I taught, or that this references, is a class called EDU 302. We've changed the name to Technology in the Classroom K-8. And the reason I embraced BYOD or BYOT is that my students are going into classrooms that are not MLTI classrooms. They're not classrooms with one-to-one laptops. There are classrooms where there might be a handful of iPads, there might be a computer in the corner of the room, there might be a couple kids with iPods. And so what it was about was trying to figure out a way to maximize the devices available, to make use of what was there, to maybe model good practices, right? So what I would like you to do right now is just open another tab in your browser. This is like a test in your ability to browse.
Oh, you can't.
Right? Can you open another tab? Pardon me?
I shouldn't be here because I don't have a laptop with me.
Oh, you don't have to. You got a smartphone?
Yeah, but I have no idea how to get where you are.
Okay, can you open up a web browser? Or if you want to, you could move up one and maybe follow along with somebody if that feels more comfortable for you.
Yeah.
You don't have to be connected. You can see what we're doing right here on the screen.
Well, I kind of wanted to learn how to be connected. That
Sure.
was my point in being here.
So if you open a new tab and you go to Kahoot.it, it's going to ask you to enter a game pin, and this is our game pin. Okay? Now, one of the things I should mention is these are all technologies I use in face-to-face sessions with students. Some of these you could use with online, but not this one. This is not one. This is really about us all being in the same space. Has anybody ever done a Kahoot before? Okay.
I've never even heard of it.
Neither.
Kahoot, in my house, Kahoot is something we do in lieu of family game nights sometimes. We play Kahoots. We played one the other night that was on characters from Harry Potter, 42 questions. It was like super competitive, let me tell you. So we have 4 players right now. Everybody that wanted to play, are they on?
Are you able to get a web browser?
I don't want to play games. That's not what I want.
I can use my phone if you want to use my laptop.
No, I don't want to play games. I want
It's not a game, it's an
It's not a
interactive
game.
quiz.
It's like a quiz.
It's like a
A lot of
check-in,
people
it's
do
an
quizzes
assessment.
on
It's an
it,
assessment
Or an
using
assessment.
a game
or to
metaphor.
learn
I'm not
vocabulary.
really understanding this at all.
So this session is about bring your own technology, and
How about if I sit with you, Diane? We can look on
yeah,
together.
and so one of the ideas is that you can use technologies like Kahoot, which is common in
So we're in
K-12,
here. Let's just take
to
it
check
from
in with your students, okay? So this, for me, for this session, is a bit of a formative assessment, okay? So if I click Start Now, what it's going to do is it's going to prompt you and say, are you ready? It's just 4 questions, 4 simple questions. And the first question is, what kind of mobile device would you bring to class? So you as a student, if you were a student in a class, what mobile device would you bring to class? Obviously you can't pick multiple answers. It gives you a clock countdown and you pick your option.
Oh, but I have to be able to see the presenting screen
That's
in order to know.
it. That's
the
why this
symbols.
is not an online tool. We're going to look at Socrative last, and that you could use in an online environment.
And this is a responsive interface. So this works cross browsers and across everything.
Everything.
So this kind of eliminates the need for clickers.
It completely eliminates need for clickers. I find it easier to use than like Poll Anywhere or any of that kind of stuff. This is like way easier.
Do you guys
This
just
is-
know if it's screen reader accessible? Does
It
work
is.
or not?
Good question.
And the use of the symbols
Yeah.
and the primary colors are also really good for people who have visual impairments.
It's interesting that the language doesn't come down. It's literally only the symbol.
Mm-hmm.
So if we have a new user here we're on question. We got it. Okay.
You got it?
Yep.
So question 2 is, for what purpose might you allow the use of mobile devices in the classroom?
Oh, timed out.
Time up? Why do I get time up? I didn't get a
Only
chance
2
to
people.
answer the second one.
2 people timed out. Okay, do we start it over again?
Please.
Okay, we'll go back.
Okay. Whoa. It's about to happen. It's
3,
restarting.
2,
Get
1.
ready.
Get ready. We're ready.
The answers are going to be up on the big screen.
Oh, they're not
All
here.
answers.
Yeah, they're not here either. That's-
What kind of mobile device would you bring to class? So if you're bringing a mobile device to class, which one of these would you bring? A laptop, a smartphone, a tablet, or like a netbook or Chromebook?
Laptop.
Okay. Yeah.
You can only
so
answer
you did
one.
it. You hit it.
Okay.
There we go, got 7 answers. Question 2, for what purposes might you allow the use of mobile devices in class?
Okay.
I only can pick
Oh, they
one.
rearranged.
In-class exercises, yeah, for right now. Collaboration, research, or assessment. Okay. Question 3, there's only 4 questions. How many of your learners do you think have access to a mobile device? Some of them, most of them, all of them, or few of them?
This is stressful with the timing thing.
You can adjust the timing. That's where it gets in. This is where this is a great technology to use in class as a formative assessment because it forces the focus, right? You can't be dilly-dallying on Facebook or something like that in class on a mobile device and staying current with one of these formative assessments.
Oh, well, that's a
And
good
this
way
is
to
completely
deal with
free,
that
by the way.
Can you get preloaded? Did you have to make up all those Harry Potter questions yourself?
No, you've got and I'll show you that.
Oh, good.
It's a repository.
Yeah. So last question. How often do you use Google Drive?
Almost never.
Does that include all the other apps or just the Drive?
Google Drive,
Never.
in general. Rarely, frequently, always, never.
How about
And you can make it so there's no timing on the question. You can also make it so there's annoying music tick-tocking in the background.
Jeopardy theme.
Now, when I click next, I could download the results. We could look at them right now. It will bring them right into Google Drive, into a spreadsheet. And that's a wonderful place to take the data and then have a little discussion about why the answers kind of came out like they did. And in my class, at least, it's a wonderful place to sort of pre-assess and see where are they at so that I can make some on-the-fly adjustments to what we're going to do.
What's the
For that
cost for
day.
this?
Pardon?
Well, how do they make money? Do you have to sign special agreements? You know?
I don't really know how they make money. There's no advertising
No
on
advertising
it.
either? Okay.
I'm not really sure. If you click on play a different Kahoot, that's where it does come across as game-like because it says play a different Kahoot.
again?
So we're back at Game Pin and
Yeah, I'm just going to show you quickly up here on my screen. Let me go to get Kahoot and sign in.
Oh.
So when I sign in, I can create 3 different kinds of things. I can create a quiz, a discussion, or a survey. Now the fun thing about the quizzes, which there's kind of 2 sides to this, but my students find it fun, is that it's not only about who got the question right, who got it right the fastest. That's where my students get hyper-focused, right, and competitive. But if you want to know about public Kahoots, so those are I have my Kahoots, but then I have a category called public Kahoots, and you could go search for anything. Now, a lot of these are for K-12, but for example, there are,
Oh, yes. Well.
well, let's see. There's a lot of Harry Potter ones, and they go on further. I mean, and some of them are long. This is 10 questions. Here's 41 questions. You can preview them by just clicking on them.
So there's academics in here too.
Yeah, there is. And you can sort by subject area and things like that. There are higher ed ones.
Yep.
So this was just, if you go to create.kahoot.it, so kahoot.it is to take one.
Right.
Create.kahoot.it.
Oh, got it.
Or
Get Kahoot.
yeah, get Kahoot. Either one of those will take you to how you make them. Okay?
GetKahoot.com.
get.kahoot.
You can Google, just if you Google Kahoot, it will give you 2 websites. One is something like getkahoot.com. That's how you make them. The one that's called kahoot.it, that's the take one, right? That's the play one. My thing is that I routinely will click on the wrong one. I just end up going back and clicking on the right one. Because I see the word Kahoot and I'm like, oh, that's what I want. No, wait a minute, that wasn't what I wanted.
So you have to create an account first and register.
You do, but you can link it to your Facebook or your Twitter. So if you already have an existing ID, you can just authenticate through that.
Okay.
But to take one as a student, you don't have to do anything. That's one of my things. I didn't want my students to have to create all these multiple accounts in order to try this stuff out. So just to give you a little bit of background, so like I said, I did this for 4 semesters, and there are some lessons I learned, and I tried to digest them down to maybe things that might be helpful if you're thinking about trying this in your own classroom. And the first one, and this is a tough one for me because I see myself as someone who also likes to help people use their devices. You don't have to be well versed in every device. You can't be, right? Somebody has a Samsung phone, somebody has a Google Nexus tablet, somebody has an iPad. I'm not capable of going out and learning all these devices, right? And once I embraced that and kind of owned it, and then I saw it as an opportunity to help model for them, how do you troubleshoot, okay? So if this is not working for you, how can we troubleshoot? How can we figure out what's going on? A couple other things I learned that are probably the big things for folks in here interested in education. The participation in my classes really went up, right? And we'll talk about this in greater detail in a minute, but my class is really about what I call DNA. I call it device neutral assignments, meaning I don't care what device you use, I don't care what app you use, it is totally your choice. I look at it like what kind of car you drive. If your car can get you from point A to point B, that's all I care about, right? So I try to really make it neutral, and because of that, I think students then engage with apps and devices that work for them, right? It also, by its nature, the fact that a lot of them are using mobile devices or using phones and iPads and things like that, there's a lot more collaboration and communication. There's a lot more sharing of stuff. I'll talk about this in a minute, but one of the things I did was I did some very intentional grouping in my class to help with that. The learning in my class is very driven by the students in the class. It's not so much me standing at the front, which just seems weird standing up here talking about it. It was more group work, like I maybe talked for like 5 or 10 minutes to kind of lay the stage, and then they were working on things, okay? And a lot of it was about sort of embracing, helping them sort of fine-tune their digital literacy skills. One of the sort of themes when they went through my class was that they developed their own professional development plans, because we did a lot of exercises that helped them sort of peel back the layers and realize where their deficits really were. You know, these are traditional age students, and they see that many of them see themselves as, you know, using Mark Prensky's language, we're digital natives. You know, we know technology. Well, kind of know they don't. They know very specific kinds of technology, but they don't necessarily know skills that, particularly as pre-service teachers, they need going in the classroom.
Right.
It really transformed my class into a lot of project-based, inquiry-based learning. You know, we did these self-assessments to help them write their professional development plan, and then we did check-ins throughout the rest of the semester, but that was really driven by them, what they did to address those skill deficits and what artifacts they generated to document that they had addressed them, and what the timeline was, and all of that was completely up to them. That was not on me. They grouped based on these things. They kind of self-selected, like there was a group of them that were all really felt like, because of their field placements, that they needed to get really good at using smart boards. So they self-selected. There was a group of 5 of them. That's what they worked on together. That was one of their goals. And sort of, this may seem a little simple, but when everybody's on a different device, screenshots are really one of the best things you can ever learn how to do on any technology. On my iPhone, it's the power button and the top button. If on a Mac, it's what, Shift F4 to resize the screen. That may seem silly, but no, you just got excited. You now know how to take a screenshot.
On my iPhone, yeah.
So I used it as a formative assessment, right? Students are working on a project in a group, and I'll say, well, how's it going? They can send me a screenshot of their work. I don't need to go mining through what they're doing, but I can get an overall visual of it. Or I think it's a great skill to have for tech support, not for me tech support, for other tech support. When they call and say, Blackboard's not working, if they can send them a screenshot of what's going on, that can be so helpful to tech support. So I can't stress enough, if you do anything with BYOD, make sure they figure out how to take screenshots on whatever devices they're using.
How to take screenshots.
Okay, so on an iPad, it is the power button, and it's just like an iPhone. So it's,
Power button and
I don't have an
home
iPhone
button.
and I don't have an iPad.
Oh, so now it's
No, where to
Okay,
go?
what's the model?
yeah, what's
I
your
have a Samsung.
Samsung Galaxy?
Yeah.
Okay, can someone Google
Yep.
screenshots Samsung Galaxy?
We're
Oh,
going.
okay.
There you
can
go.
do that.
But screenshots, man.
Where's the screenshot? Got one of the words.
It goes to your
Then I-
pictures.
Yes.
Then you need to send it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Isn't that amazing? Google is working so hard, it actually gives the tutorial at the top.
Oh, wow.
Press and hold the standby key on the right side. I don't know, it's on the right side. If you hold it
Now,
upright.
now we're all going to learn how to take a screenshot on a
Now there's
Samsung
a
Galaxy.
Standby key on the
And the
right
troubleshooting
side.
step of
Where am I
Googling
supposed
first.
to be?
There you go.
That's the on
Well,
off
or
thing.
my troubleshooting
Another
step, I
second
should have
one.
mentioned this earlier, ask
Oh,
free
that.
before me.
This
Yeah.
thing turns it on and off.
I plugged
Yeah,
that
it's
in my
on there.
morning session.
You
I
did?
said I
Ask
got
free
it from
before me.
Ashley.
That didn't
I'll
help.
see if I can Google it and
That didn't help.
down directions.
It's forcing your
It
students
says
to
this
go
is a
through three
Galaxy
different
S4,
steps
you know,
before
the-
they
say the
ask
model?
you a question.
What also helps them articulate the question better when it does make it to you.
I'm
They
opening up.
practiced it
Let's
3
see.
times.
Sheila, I'm surprised you're one of my 3 before me when I teach.
Here's a video.
Yeah.
Ask
Well,
the
that's probably
librarian.
why I don't know, because
Yeah.
I'm the first or second.
Yeah. No, ask three before me is, you know, and that could be ask Google, ask the person on either side of you. Now, I do say to students, if you are in a high anxiety moment, we could skip that. But for most things, 99% of things,
Standby button.
my personal favorite is, when does that do?
Yeah.
Ask
On
three before
the
me.
Galaxy Samsung.
It really, really helps. So yeah, so you don't need to know the device. These are just my sort of key things. Don't need to know the device. Participation increased when we did bring whatever you have. Collaboration and communication increased amongst my students. It was more sort of inquiry, project-driven work that we were doing, and I'll show you some examples. And learn to take screenshots. I think if you get those basic things down, you're golden. Now, one of the things Nearpod has is you have this ability to poll people questions. You still have your Nearpod window open? Got that tab open? So you can answer the question. Nearpod lets you build in, you can build in quiz questions, open-ended questions, just a simple poll, kind of like the Kahoot, but if you want to embed it right in your slides, it will let you do that, and then you can kind of get an idea how students are responding. You can even hide their IDs. So if you don't want to, you know, shame anyone or anything like that, you can totally do that. Okay? Then you can also share out your results. Have you ever tried Nearpod, Mina?
No, I'm very excited.
So the way it works is that you can import any kind of presentation, anything.
Keynote?
PowerPoint, Keynote. I use Haiku Deck. That's my new favorite. It's been for about 1.5 years. It's a web-based presentation. I'll talk about it in a second. And I like it because, like a haiku, it limits you. It limits how much information I can put on a slide, and that's a good thing for me. I could talk the talk of clean presentation, but I can't always walk it. So I use Haiku Deck, and then I just save it as a PDF and then stick it in here, and it parses out the slides. I can reorder them in Nearpod. I can put in these questions wherever I want. And if anybody wants to see what that looks like, I can show you. Now here's one more question for you. For what purpose do you allow the use of mobile phones in a class? And this is an open-ended question, so you can type in an answer. So if you're going to allow a mobile phone in the classroom, for what purpose? What are you comfortable with students doing? So Deb, you're comfortable with texting? With students texting?
Well, not really, but yes, that's my answer.
Well, I mean, you could totally do that, texting
No, I
your
know
answers.
students who text questions up to the faculty member. Yeah.
I think, can you text to today's meet? There's a service like today's meet that you can actually text to, text questions. So in-class research and writing, connecting to peers, activities, notes. No, oh, I thought it said note da king.
Maybe, you know.
Yeah,
Autocorrect,
note taking,
you could say.
yeah. So, I mean, this is a wonderful way to get some dynamic answers, to keep everybody focused on a common screen. It's a handy little app. I don't use it a whole lot because I'm not traditionally, at least in this class, doing this kind of session, but for here it kind of works. And then at any time I can share out my results, highlight anything. Students can enter my contact information in their phones and use it to contact research. Oh, there you go. That's super. Oh, you're nice. You give your number.
Well, we have a text messaging service, so I ask them to take out their phones and enter the number for Ask a Librarian, and you could do that with financial aid or other important resources, maybe during an orientation.
Well, I think it's a way to kind of model acceptable behavior, right?
Yeah.
Model what is likely to be expected of them when they are outside of the classroom, right? You can have your cell phone and not be on Yik Yak or Twitter or whatever. You can, not that you can't use, I don't know how you'd use Yik Yak in an academic way, but you could use Twitter in an academic way, but modeling what's acceptable, what's not acceptable, you know, and maybe sort of minimizing what's not acceptable behavior. So one of the things I focused on with this sort of BYOD is what kind of apps are people going to use? And I was really open to this, so I wanted to kind of give you an overview of some of the things that my students used. Because like I said, it was not just about their device, their choice in the device they used, but it was also their choice about what programs, what applications they used to do the work, okay? So, polling, you know, surveying, that kind of stuff. I did use some Poll Everywhere. I'm not really a huge fan of Poll Everywhere. I like Kahoot, personally. Edmodo has a nice polling feature if you use Edmodo, which is kind of like Facebook for the classroom. I also like Socrative, which we'll look at the end, or just a really simple Google form, right? If anybody's at Google Forms are your friend. I use them in class a lot. I have students submit a lot of work through them. For example, my students collected examples of lessons that did a really good job of integrating ISTE standards. Well, if they're collecting those and everybody's collecting them, wouldn't it help if everybody had access to everybody's list? So what they did is I created a template as a Google form. They all entered their good finds when they found them in the form, and then at the end of the semester, everybody got the spreadsheet. So they had 300 and something lesson plans that they could sort by ISTE standards, by subject matter, by all these things. So when they're practicing teachers, they have a repository of reviewed materials, including a column that we said recommendations for adaptation. So they had that available to them later as a resource to use. They could also volunteer to be on a mailing list and get the compendium of all 4 semesters worth of reviews if they wanted that. So that was a Google form.
That slide said Socrative. Can you say a little bit about that?
We're going to do one. QR codes. I know people think it's kind of dated, but what I like about QR codes is the immediacy of it, right? So if you were to capture this QR code right here, it would take you to the haiku deck for this session. It's not me emailing it to everybody and waiting for you to get the email and open it and check your spam. It's not you logging on the Blackboard to click on something to download it. It's immediate. So as long as you have a free QR code reader and a camera on your device, you can get this. It's pretty, I love it for conferences. You know, QR code reader?
I have no idea.
Okay, so
I don't think
this
it's
is
the
a
kind of
QR
thing I
code right
use.
here.
I don't think it's the kind of thing
They're
I
not
use.
big in the United States.
Pardon me?
They're not big in the United States.
No,
I
you
mean,
see
they're
them a lot
all
at
over
conferences,
Japan.
though.
Yeah.
At this conference.
Yeah, there's one on the handout.
But the
And
question
so-
is,
but
it's
I
for
don't-
sending URLs.
I just don't know
It's
where
exactly-
So,
I don't think I
Yeah.
ever activated it.
Yeah, so a QR
Because I
code
could
reader,
say
if
that.
you were to take a picture of that little box, it's like, think of it like a barcode scanner. That black and white box there, with your QR reader, will take you directly to the website for this presentation.
So what
Which
do you
is
mean,
just
like
an
hold it up to, I don't understand, where will you hold it up to?
Yeah,
So you
Here, I'll
download
show
the
you.
QR reader app and then you
you
just
take a picture of
take a
it.
picture of the.
Yeah.
And when you take a picture
So,
of
but
it,
I mean, you can't get it from, where are you giving it to them from?
Well, it's on your package materials here. for the
I see.
conference.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I have this app on my phone called a QR reader. See, it makes a box, right? on my
Right, I know what it does.
Yep.
I think I'm trying to understand where
Where it goes?
people are gonna, So you're just talking about the one that's already been given to us.
Yeah.
Well, no, but that's not really given to you. You're just watching it. You don't have a copy of it.
That's what I was trying to understand. You're telling us that we could.
If you
hold up our
wanted your
phone
own
to
copy
that
of it,
thing
you
on
could
the
have your own
screen.
copy of it.
You can hold up your phone to any QR code that you find anywhere in the world. And they're linked to websites. They take you to the place that the QR code is linked to.
All it is a web. It's another way of looking at a web address.
Okay.
So if somebody said, I have this great website and the URL is about this long and you can't write it down or you mess it up and you're writing down of it in your notes, a QR code is a shortcut to get there.
Okay.
So for the purposes of this session, that QR code would basically take you to Haiku Deck, to the original slides for this session. So if you wanted that, if you wanted to be able to download a copy of it or edit it or use something from it, you could do that. In my class, it's a shortcut. It makes it easier for my students in the class because they're not waiting for an email to come in, they're not waiting to log on to something. They grab it with whatever the camera is on their device and they're there. It saves us a lot of time. When we work with text, whether it's with them taking notes, their formal writing, their informal writing, their group writing, these are some of the apps they've used. They've used Microsoft OneNote. We have Office 365 is one of the options we have available now in the main system. You can download Microsoft Office on your personal computer now, and OneNote is part of that package. It is a wonderful note-taking app. It's really nice, and it's actually linked to something called OneDrive, which is Microsoft's version of Google Drive. But OneNote has integrated it as the ability to take screenshots, annotate, stick in notes, clippings from websites. You can really build a very robust notebook with OneNote. Google Drive, which we all have access to. I've been using Evernote for a long time. That's another one that I like to use. I have it on my phone. I have it on my laptop. I had a student who really worked well with the web version of it because he had a processing delay. And Evernote's web interface is just white and you type text. There's nothing. And it really helped him focus on what he was doing. So for him, that worked. The companion to Evernote is called Sketch. And Sketch lets you take screenshots and write on them. So say, for example, you have an image, a historical archive image, and you want the students to annotate on it, right? And I annotate the image. They can use Sketch for doing that with a screenshot. Or maybe you take a screenshot of a student's first page of an essay, and you want to go through and draw some stuff and point to some stuff and do arrows to move stuff here. That's what Sketch will do. Microsoft OneNote will do that as well. Padlet is like a big poster board, and I'll show you one. And then Today's Meet has got to be the simplest one to use. You type in Today's Meet in Google. It'll take you to the website. It says, what do you want to call your classroom? You can call it Jay's Classroom. They'll say, how long do you want it to exist? A day, 5 days, a year? And your students just go there and they just write short comments or questions. And it's a scrolling way to keep track of what's going on in the room.
Let's go a quick question about that. Are all the tools that you're mentioning completely cross-platform? Android, iOS, Windows, Mac, Linux, including Microsoft OneNote?
OneNote, I've not tried it on Linux. It works perfectly well on the Mac. It works on the iPhone. It worked on the Android.
Oh, great.
It worked on the PCs in my classroom. I didn't try it on a Chromebook, so I don't think it would work on that. I'm not sure. But the thing is that you pick what works for you, right? So maybe if you have a Chromebook, because it's integrated with Google, you're better off probably using Google Drive. I love ebooks. Ebooks are great because they're never out of stock and there's no shipping. They can never say, I forgot my book. No, you always have your book, right? For accessibility purposes, ebooks are phenomenal, right? You can use a screen reader, you can do stuff with contrast colors, you can annotate. A lot of your readers have built-in text-to-speech options. I think they're more cost-effective in many cases than buying a print book. Now, there are things for which I want to, I mean, if I'm reading a book for pleasure, I want a print book. If I have students reading a book about social media policy, I'm usually okay with it being an ebook. I want both, but for the purposes of my class, my students find ebooks to be super helpful and a real time saver. Like I said, screenshots are super important, but also screencasting, the ability to share something that you draw out on your screen with someone else, more than just a single image. And there's a lot of free tools for doing that. There's Snagit. There's built-in tools on the Mac to do that. Jing is a free tool. Mina and BJ are both huge advocates, and for Screencast-O-Matic. Now, Jay, you were mentioning apps that work on every platform. Explain Everything does not work on every platform. It only works on the iPad. But it's really nice. So take a picture or record a video if you're doing something on the screen. That would be a screencast. My students really, because this was an educational technology class, it was really helpful for them to be able to explain a process, whether it was to a peer or to me. And then we talked also about different tools they used to in their work when they were maybe choosing a non-textual medium. ThingLink, which is one that Mina introduced me to, VoiceThread, somebody, actually Uriah is doing a session right now on VoiceThread, Padlet that I mentioned before, Concept Board, which is just a bulletin board, much like Padlet, and Canva is a drawing tool. These are all free online tools. So this just gives you an idea that there's no way I could be a master of all these tools, right? There's just no, maybe Mina can or BJ can, but I can't. These are tools that my students found and they like to use because they met their needs, right? And they figured them out on their own. I wasn't teaching them, here's how you use Padlet, here's how you use Canva. They were figuring them out, okay? And they selected them. I didn't generate this list, okay? Then there's the issue of storage, and I think this is another thing. If you learn screenshots, you should also learn some cloud-based storage, because how many of you have had students that say, my laptop died in the middle of the semester? If you embrace some cloud-based storage, you at least could access maybe your work when the device goes down. We get Google Drive. We get a nice little chunk of Google Drive. If you don't like Google Drive, some people I know are fearful of the Google machine. You could use Dropbox. You get an allocation of several gigs for free. I forgot what the number of gigs is you get for free in Dropbox. I think it's 2. Microsoft OneDrive comes with our Microsoft 365 accounts. I like to think of it as our Microsoft version of all the stuff we have with Google. It's just the Microsoft version of it. And then if you're on a Mac, embracing the iCloud. That's another option. You could use that.
One other thing about Google Drive that's interesting is the elementary school, the middle school my daughter's in does, since 4th grade, have done everything in Google Drive. And so she will do homework at home on one computer, on a school on another one, and it's 100% chat, collaborative documents. And the reason why I asked before is, to me, Google Drive is just the storage, but you're talking also about all the apps.
All the apps that are built in, and then also the apps you can add on.
I mean, she's learning scripting. She's doing formulas in Google spreadsheets in the 6th grade. So that the benefit of being able to do it multiple places.
Well, to do it multiple places, to be able to share it, to be able to see the history. That's one of the great features is to see the history of a document.
Yep.
I mean, if a student is writing a paper for you, and they have it on Google Drive, and they just send you an email saying, hey, here's the file, can you go link to it, can you go look at it? And you give them some feedback. And then they turn it in later, and you think, man, I don't see how this is different. And then when they say before, you can go back and look at that document history and see, well, in fact, they asked me for that feedback. I spent about an hour looking at it and, pondering it and giving them feedback, and they did nothing with it. Mm-hmm. Hopefully they do something with it. But that information is there.
And correct me, I don't know if you know this, but I'm 99% sure Google Drive just gave us unlimited storage for apps for education.
Maybe.
I feel like that was recent, like the last 2 weeks. We'll have to follow up. But
maybe. I haven't looked lately what percentage of my space I'm using.
Okay.
I will say I diversify, and maybe it's my own paranoia, but I have stuff on Google Drive. I have stuff in Dropbox. I don't use Microsoft OneDrive as much because mainly I had a student start using it this year when we got that free Microsoft 365, and I have all my personal music and photos in iCloud.
One other thing around that, Dropbox and Google Drive totally syncs local to
Yeah.
a machine. I get a little nervous about being offline or losing things, and so we use both, and both of them take up a lot of space, but all of those files are local too. That's
Well,
nice.
I divide them up, right? So my personal stuff, my personal documents, things go to Dropbox. My school stuff goes to Google Drive.
Got it.
I'm really strange about that stuff, I know. So to give you a quick example of some of the things my students are doing, they had an assignment called Create a Personal Learning Network, okay? And I gave them some ideas, like what I wanted them to do was connect to people in their discipline through some sort of technology. I want them to start to collect ideas and resources they could use. And I wanted them to kind of start to connect to the larger community of their discipline, okay? And so we talked about some of the ways they could do that. We talked about, RSS feeds. We talked about Twitter. We talked about different kinds of connection options, but then it was completely up to them where they went with it, okay? Oh, and last, I'm sorry, I forgot a place to store all of this. What this turned out to be for each student was completely different. I just want to show you quickly. The student gave me permission. She ended up using Padlet, which is, I mentioned before, is like a poster board. But what it does is it's like a multimedia poster board. So she's got a PDF file here that's her reflection on the process. She has a sticky note that some of the people she started to connect with she used Twitter. So she had people she follows, comments they've made to her, hashtags she's using. She just keeps adding notes to this as she was working on it. Tweets that really kind of got her thinking about an idea. Here's one. Here's 440 plus resources on social media and education. She thought that one was great because we were actually talking that day about social media in our class. She got really excited because she was working on a literacy binder for her literacy class, and one of the authors tweeted her back explaining why she had the illustrations as pen and ink drawings in her book. She was actually choosing to store all her stuff in her Google folder, and she gave me a link to that lower down in this document. But this was her place where she collected all her stuff. So I could click on that attachment, go see her collection of resources that she started to collect. This sort of gave me, was like her bulletin board of all the work she compiled together for this assignment, including her reflection.
Which one is this?
This was her personal learning system. This is her way to connect with people. It's a Padlet.
I'm trying to find out what.
Yep. And so all you do is go to Padlet.com. It's free, and it brings up basically as big as you want it virtual poster board. And you can make it private. This one is shared with me. You could share it with individual people. Multiple people can collaborate on one. But it's not device specific, and it's free. So any device you have that has an internet connection, you can use Padlet. Some of the other work they did with this idea that any device, you could do it on any device. Their very first assignment was they created a user guide for them.
That's a good.
And this is my user guide, because I forgot to ask any of the students for permission if I could share their user guide. So this is mine. It's called Ashley at a Glance. It's based on my Honda lawnmower manual. I gave you a little bit of background on me because students always like to know something about you, and I like to monitor what they know about me. I don't want to sound like a control freak, but I don't. Yeah, I just like
table texting and off-task computer.
Oh, I can smell that stuff in a room. I know that look. There's nothing that interesting that they're like. And besides which, we were using this class. I wanted it on the table. I don't want it under the table, glowing.
So do you go over your expectations and have that conversation initially with your student?
We co-drafted
Oh, okay.
our classroom policy. You know, recognizing that we're all adults, technically, and what is respectful, not just of me, but of each other, of this environment. What would they want to see in their own students, since these are pre-service teachers? And so that was something we drafted at the very beginning.
Did they come up with most of it on their own, or did you have to push them a bit?
No, they came up with most of it on their own. And actually, they're a lot harsher than I would be.
And they're graduate students, right?
No, these are
undergrad?
sophomores, some juniors.
That's excellent.
Yeah.
That's not to say that occasionally they didn't buck the trend, buck the policy a little bit. But a lot of the enforcement came from their peers because it was so a lot of group work, very student driven. If they were off task, it became very apparent to everybody that somebody was doing something they weren't supposed to be doing. So this was a user guide. Another example we used in class, and I'll give you one, this will be the last one I give you before I give you the last Socrative question, is these are elementary ed students and they love book reports. I don't know why. I have bad memories of book reports from school. Hated it. So one of the things we talked about was one of the things BYOD gives you an opportunity to do is explore learning menus. I'm a huge fan of learning menus. And the idea is that students choose different pathways through an assignment. You make a choice. You have some choice in all of this, right? And particularly for younger kids, I don't know about you, but I don't remember having a lot of choices when I was in elementary school. So what we did is we practiced this. So what I did is I made up these examples, and the idea was they had to choose a path going from left to right. So they've got, this is a 9-cell table basically. And so they had to choose one thing from the first column. So if they were going to create an alternative to a book report, one of the things they could do was create trading cards for the characters. And they had to pick the app that they used to do it. I gave them an example of something they could use. They could create a story map. They could do character text, like text between Romeo and Juliet, mimic what the text messages would look like. Or they could create a character quiz, like those BuzzFeed, what kind of chocolate are you quizzes.
15 favorite.
Yeah. But if you think about it, they have to have read the material to do this for a child, right? And it's not them writing the 5-sentence paragraph that many of them get stifled by. Because sort of a hidden part of all of this class was about differentiation, right? And not differentiation in terms of special ed, but differentiation in terms of honoring different styles of learning and not privileging one type of learner, meaning the text-based learner. Yeah. So they did things like they made book trailers. That was one of the end is sort of, so the technology, the difficulty of the technology went up as we went across. So these were all fairly simple. Then we did, one of my personal favorites on the low-tech side was astrological signs. You had to generate what you thought were the astrological signs of all the characters in the book you read. You have to do a lot of research to figure that out, just so you know. Yearbook entries, they had to create a 6-cell cartoon strip to summarize the story. That was another one. That's as we move along. So they're both having to draw and develop the text and figure out what are the key pieces I have to say to give somebody an overview of this book. And then they also did this sort of on the final column, in addition to the book trailers, they did an exercise where you could create a childhood or an adulthood for a character in a children's book. You really have to know the book in and out if that's something you're going to do. Okay? So this is another example of how and the technology they use, and my students did one from each column of this as an exercise for themselves, since they were also taking a literacy class at the same time and reading children's books. Okay? So last but not least, I promised to give you a Socrative example. What I want you to do is go to Socrative.com, SOCRATIVE.com, and our room code is B3FF48FC.
Student login.
Student login.
Student login first.
Just go to you can actually look at it right back here. It might be easier if you can see it back on the back here. Socrative.com.
There it is.
And when you get there, enter the room code.
In this little box here?
Yep.
Yeah, okay, I can't read it, so.
B3
Yeah.
FF 48 FC.
Where's the box?
Oh, you went to GoDaddy. Oh, you went to Scratic.com.
Oh, okay.
Not Socrative. SOCRATIV.
Yeah, I just typed it wrong.
And so it's an open question for you. If you've implemented bring your own device or bring your own technology or mobile learning, what are the most important lessons you've learned? And maybe what are your favorite apps that you've used? Maybe ones that haven't been mentioned here.
Case specific.
Nope.
Number? Where do you want me to put that number?
No, not Socratic. Socrative. TIVE.
So,
Let me type it in for you?
No, I'll just watch. Really, I don't think, it's.
there's no support for device. Everybody's on their own. Is that right? The university system on campuses, you're on your own. You need to find your own computer, you need to pay for your own computer, and yet you're expected to have a computer to access Blackboard.
Every campus and every
We have
all
labs.
has different
Yeah.
structures, yeah. But there's an IT help desk that kind of helps.
That's across all platforms. They do have somebody who knows a Galaxy, they know if somebody needs.
Not necessarily.
Yeah, not necessarily their first call, but yes.
Now,
What are their
what you may
preferences?
notice is that
Windows.
Socrative, as compared to say Kahoot, is a little bit more formal looking.
Yep.
But you can actually develop full-blown assessments in here. This was just a poll question. You can also do one of my favorites is ticket out the door. It's the question you ask is they're leaving, right? That closure exercise that kind of helps guide what you're going to do the next class meeting. But Socrative is free. And you can actually download into Excel. You can do some pretty involved data analysis with answers.
So if you're a pre-service teacher that's getting ready to be in a school that has a particular method around scoring guides and rubrics that might have a number of learning targets and have some specific 1, 2, 3, 4 for self-assessment, you can integrate that data as well with this.
This is all integrated also with the Common Core. It's got a whole Common Core set of pre-assessments.
How about
that
main
you can
learning
use.
results? Has anybody done any of that?
I don't know if anybody's done those.
All right, thank you.
But
Kind of a holy
Socrative is
grail there.
pretty beefy, and it can get a little dry sometimes with kids, where Kahoot has that little bit of a look that's a little
Yeah, it's
fuzzier.
more fun.
But you can ask a lot of different types of questions and get some really good answers.
Everybody should have a window for
Okay.
CSS.
So as an instructor, I know we're over time here, you can go back to your dashboard. I could ask a quick question. I could start a quiz. Here's my ticket out the door. It's a pretty simple interface and it's completely free, and you can log in with your Google account.
This is the one that can be used online asynchronously?
Yes, yes. So once you're ready to deploy a quiz, you can deploy it. They go to Socrative. You just give them the room code to go in. They authenticate. And you can, and what I really like about it is you can open a very narrow window of time for them to do something.
How do you then align that for those responses to an ID or to student data? Because this is
You can
self-reported.
preload it. You can preload your
Yeah.
student IDs in there if you wanted to.
One of the things you've been saying over and over again is this is free, it doesn't cost anything, but nothing's ever free.
This is true.
There's either you're giving them rights to use your data or something else. So are there any people on campuses that can help, a faculty member understand and analyze whether or not any of these are actually dangerous?
Huh?
Yes, John Forker,
Okay.
Director of Information Security.
The reason I keep saying free is that I'm working with pre-service
Yeah.
teachers that have nothing
I know.
in their classrooms. And they're trying to find anything they can use, and anything that will allow their students to use them without their students compromising.
Without an email address
Yeah.
or any
And that's the tough
identifying-
thing.
And
That's
so
the really
how do you,
tough
then my
thing.
question is then in some assessments you have to bring that back to the student.
Right.
ID.
He did a talk on that today that was recorded, so.
good.
Yeah,
I will
we did a
join
social
the
media session.
Thank
So
you.
anyways, I apologize we ran over.
Good stuff.
That's good.
Thank you
Good
very much.
stuff.
You're welcome.
And